stripping away that illusion. We are looking at the foundational principles of microbiology, but not just the textbook stuff. We want to understand the power dynamics. The source material covers everything from the definition of life itself to the brutal physics of infection.
And the mission here is really to look at the world through three specific lenses. We want to figure out, one, where do we actually draw the line between alive and not alive? Because as we're going to see, it is surprisingly blurry.
Yeah.
Two, how do these microscopic systems function with such terrifying efficiency? And three, the big one, the real estate rule. Why does location in the body change absolutely everything?
Right. Location, location, location. It's not just for real estate agents, it's for pathologists, apparently.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start with the cast of characters. The source material breaks this down into a kind of hierarchy. You have the cellular life, and then you have this shadowy group called acellular entities. Let's start with the things that are definitely alive.
Right. So to be in the definitely alive club, you have to meet the classic biological criteria. This is the checklist, basically.
Okay, what's on it?
You need metabolism, meaning you have to eat and process energy. You need reproduction. You need to grow. You need to respond to your environment. And critically, you need homeostasis. You have to be able to keep your internal conditions stable even when the outside world goes completely haywire.
So if you tick those boxes, you get a membership card. And the first group on the list is the prokaryotes.
The prokaryotes, these are your bacteria and archaea, and I like to think of them as the minimalists of the biological world.
Minimalists. Why minimalists?
Because they have stripped everything down to the absolute essentials. If you look at the diagram of a bacterial cell in the notes, what's missing?
Well, there's no nucleus.
No nucleus, no membrane-bound organelles, no mitochondria, no chloroplasts. It's just a cell wall, a membrane, and inside the DNA is just floating there in a loop.
Sounds primitive.
See, that is the trap. That is the first mental trap the source warns us about. We see simple structure and we immediately assume simple function. But structurally simple does not mean stupid. In fact, because they don't have all that complex internal plumbing, they are incredibly versatile.
How so? What does that let them do?
Well, think about human metabolism for a second. We're boring. We are really, really boring. We need organic carbon, food, and we need oxygen. That's pretty much it. If you take away oxygen, we die. If you feed us sulfur, we die.
Right.
Bacteria. There are bacteria that eat sulfur for breakfast. There are bacteria that eat iron. There are bacteria that live in boiling acid pools in Yellowstone, or at the bottom of the ocean near thermal vents where the pressure would crush us into a paste. They have figured out chemical pathways that human chemists, with all our technology, struggle to replicate in a billion-dollar lab.
So while we're structurally complex, they are chemically genius.
Precisely. They're the Swiss Army knives of chemistry.
Yeah.
And they reproduce with this brutal simplicity called binary fission.
Okay, binary fission.
They don't need a partner. They don't need to date. They just clone themselves. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8. It's exponential, and it is incredibly fast.
Okay, so that's the prokaryotes,
Yeah.
the minimalists. Then we move up the ladder to the eukaryotes. This group includes fungi, protozoa, helminths, which I learned is just a fancy word for worms, and, well, us.
Right. Eukaryote literally means true nucleus. This is our family. And structurally, it's a massive leap, a huge jump in complexity. We have that nucleus to lock up our DNA nice and safe. We have mitochondria to make power. We have the Golgi apparatus to package proteins. It's a factory.
It sounds much more organized. But the source material flags a major issue here. It calls it the clinical conundrum.
And this is a huge concept for anyone interested in medicine or biology. Being in the same family as fungi or protozoa sounds nice. We're all eukaryotes together. But biologically, it's an absolute nightmare for treatment.
Because we're too similar? Is that it?
Exactly. Take a look at the diagram of the fungal cell in our notes. It has a cell membrane, it has ribosomes, it has mitochondria. If you just glance at it quickly, it looks a whole lot like a human cell.
So let's say I have a fungal infection, say, in my lungs, and I want to take a drug to kill it.
You have to find a molecular target on that fungus that doesn't exist on your own cells. And that is really, really hard to do.
Ah, I see.
If you develop a poison that stops the fungus from making DNA, guess what? It might stop you from making DNA. If you target their ribosomes to stop them from making protein, you might hit your own ribosome.
Friendly fire.
Massive friendly fire. That's why antifungal drugs, and antiparasitic drugs for that matter, tend to have such nasty side effects compared to antibiotics.
Right, because with bacteria, they're so different.
So different from us that we have plenty of targets. Oh, you have a peptide glycan cell wall. I don't. I'll just smash that. But with fungi, it's like hand-to-hand combat in the dark with someone who looks just like you.
That explains why fungal infections are so stubborn. It's like trying to shoot a bad guy in a crowd when the bad guy's wearing the same uniform as all the good guys.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Okay, so those are the living things.
Yeah.
Now we enter the weird part of the outline, the life adjacent.
The gray zone, I love this part.
The source calls these acellular entities. And the headliner, of course, is the virus. Now, the source uses a very specific analogy here that I absolutely love. It calls viruses biological hackers.
It's the perfect analogy because strictly speaking, is a virus alive? No, it just isn't.
But it makes me sick. It replicates, it evolves, it sounds alive.
It does all those things, but here's the catch. Not on its own. That's the key distinction. If you put a virus in a sterile jar and leave it there for 1,000 years, absolutely nothing happens. It doesn't eat, it doesn't grow, it doesn't generate heat. It just sits there like a rock or a speck of dust.
It's inert.
Completely inert until it touches a cell. A virus is basically just code, either DNA or RNA, wrapped up in a protein box. It's like a USB drive you find in a parking lot. It has information on it, but it has no power source, no screen, no processor. It has no laptop.
And we are the laptop.
We are the laptop. The virus attaches to your cell, injects its genetic code, and essentially hijacks your entire operating system. It sends a command to your ribosomes, your little protein factories, and says, scrap all previous orders, stop making human proteins, start printing copies of me now.
So it outsources the definition of life. It borrows our machinery to tick all those boxes.
It's the ultimate efficiency. Why build a factory when you can just steal someone else's? It forces your body to spend your energy and your resources to build its children. That's why it's a hacker. It doesn't bring its own hardware. It just exploits the system that's already there.
That is terrifyingly brilliant. It really shifts how you view a viral infection. It's not just an invasion, it's a coup. It's a hostile takeover of the manufacturing plant.
And that, again, is why they're so hard to treat, going back to that clinical conundrum. Since they are using your machinery, how do you kill the virus without breaking your own machine?
It's so tricky. But then the outline goes even darker. If viruses are hackers, what on earth are prions?
Prions are. Honestly, prions are pure nightmare fuel. If a virus is a hacker inserting malicious code, a prion is a glitch in the hardware itself that corrupts everything it touches.
And the source makes a huge deal about this. Prions have no DNA, no RNA.
Zero. Nothing. This broke all the rules of biology when it was discovered. For decades, the central dogma was to transmit infection, you need genetic material. You need instructions. Prions said, hold my beer. A prion is just a protein.
Just a protein, like the stuff in my dinner.
Well, chemically, yes. It's a sequence of amino acids. It's actually a normal protein that's found in your brain, but it has been folded into the wrong shape. It's twisted. It's corrupted.
And why is a twisted protein infectious? I don't get that.
Because of conformation. In biology, shape is destiny. Shape determines function. When this misfolded prion touches a normal, healthy protein next to it, it physically forces the healthy one to misfold too. It snaps it into the wrong, corrupted shape.
So it's a chain reaction.
It's a domino effect. One turns to two, two turn to four. And the terrible thing is, these misfolded proteins are sticky. They clump together. They form these aggregates, amyloid plaques, that the cell cannot break down. They just accumulate and accumulate until the neuron literally bursts and dies.
And the source says the impact is always neurological.
Always. Mad cow disease, Kuru, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease in humans, these are all prion diseases, and they all do the same thing. They turn the brain into a sponge, literally full of holes. And because it's just a protein, not a bug, you can't kill it. You can't use antibiotics, you can't use antivirals. You can cook a prion in an autoclave at 121 degrees Celsius, and it might still be infectious.
That is absolutely horrifying. It just is geometry gone wrong.
It's geometry that kills. It forces us to realize that life isn't just about DNA and code, it's about physical structure.
Okay, let's pivot before I get too scared to continue. We've met the characters. Now I want to talk about the physics of this war. The source material has a great section on size and scale.
The physics of infection. This is one of my favorite parts because it explains the why behind so much of this.
We have this logarithmic scale chart. On the far left, we have atoms. On the far right, we have frogs' eggs. And right in the middle, that's the war zone. Walk me through the numbers here.
So we're working in metrics here. We start with the nanometer. That's a billionth of a meter. Viruses live in this neighborhood. They range from about 20 to 300 nanometers.
Tiny, It's impossibly small.
Incredibly tiny. So to give you some scale, if a virus were the size of a marble, then a bacterium, which is in the micrometer range, would be like a big beach ball.
Wow, that's a massive difference right there.
It is. Bacteria are typically zero point 0.5 to 5 micrometers, so that's 1,000 times bigger than a nanometer. And then you have human cells, which are huge by comparison, maybe 10 to 30 micrometers. So if the bacterium is a beach ball, the human cell is a small house.
But the source asks a very specific question. Why does size matter? And it points to this thing called the surface area to volume ratio.
This is the absolute key to understanding why microbes move so fast and are so efficient. In biology, being small is a superpower.
Explain that. That seems counterintuitive.
Okay, imagine a large building, like a stadium. It takes a long time to get people in and out of the doors, right? The volume inside is huge compared to the number of exits. Now imagine a tiny tent. You can get things in and out almost instantly.
Right, diffusion.
Exactly. Bacteria are so small that they have a massive surface area relative to their tiny volume. They don't need lungs, they don't need a heart or blood vessels to pump food around. Nutrients just hit their surface and bam! They are in the center of the cell in a fraction of a second. Waste hits the surface and bam, it's gone.
Which means their metabolism can just run at lightning speed.
They can eat, process their food, and divide into 2 new cells before a human cell has even finished its morning coffee. That efficiency is purely a function of their size. It allows them to scale up their operations almost instantly.
And this leads to what the notes call the neuroscience hook, the asymmetry of scale.
Yes, this is where we contrast the microbe with the neuron, and this is a conflict that defines so much of neurology.
Because neurons are the complete opposite of bacteria.
The exact opposite. A single motor neuron in your body, the cell body sits in your spine, and the axon, the long wire part, travels all the way down to your big toe. That single axon can be 1 meter long.
1 meter for a single cell.
Yes. In the microscopic world, that is galactic. To a virus, a neuron isn't a house, it's a planet. And maintaining a cell that big is incredibly expensive. It takes huge amounts of energy just to keep the lights on. And because they are so complex and so specialized, they generally do not replicate. Once they're gone, they're gone.
So we have the invader, tiny, fast, cheap, disposable. And then we have the defender, huge, slow, expensive, and irreplaceable.
That is the mismatch. That is the fundamental asymmetry. And it explains the clinical reality. In the nervous system, infection timing matters more than anything else. If bacteria start eating a neuron, your body cannot just grow a new one next week. That function is gone forever.
It's a war of attrition where we cannot afford to lose a single soldier.
Exactly. We have a finite army of irreplaceable veterans. They have infinite reinforcements of disposable recruits.
How do we survive? I mean, if they're faster and more numerous, why aren't we all just dead? This brings us to section 3, location, location, location.
The geography of defense. This is where the plot thickens and where our bodies get smart.
The source makes a really sharp distinction between colonized zones and sterile zones.
This is the concept of normal flora versus pathology. We are not uniformly covered in bugs. It's not random at all.
So there are designated parking spots.
Designated parking spots. The colonized areas are the parts of you that touch the outside world. Your skin, your mouth, the entire gastrointestinal tract from mouth to anus, the upper respiratory tract, and the urogenital tract. These are open ports, and because they're open to the world, they are crowded.
And the source says this crowding is actually a defense mechanism. That seems odd.
It's the standing room only defense. It's brilliant. Imagine your gut lining is a theater with 1,000 seats. If all 1,000 of those seats are already taken by good bacteria organisms that evolved to live there quietly and do no harm, then when a pathogen like Salmonella shows up looking for a place to set up shop, there's nowhere to sit.
No seat, no infection.
Exactly. They starve or they get flushed out. This is why taking strong, broad-spectrum antibiotics can sometimes give you a secondary infection. You nuke all the good bacteria, you empty all the seats in the theater, and suddenly the bad guys, like C, diff, have all the room in the world to move in and take over.
That makes so much sense. So that's colonization. But what about the sterile zones?
These are the VIP rooms, the inner sanctums, the places that should have no direct contact with the outside. Your blood, your cerebrospinal fluid, the CSF around your brain, deep organs like the heart, liver, kidneys, and the lower lungs down in the alveoli.
These should have 0 microbes, period.
0. If a doctor finds bacteria in your blood, that is not colonization, that is bacteremia, and that is a full-blown medical emergency.
There's a self-check question in the notes here that I like. Why is bacteremia dangerous even with weak bacteria?
It's all about context. E. coli in your colon is a model citizen. It makes vitamin K for you. It helps you digest food. It's a good neighbor. But you put that same E. coli in your bloodstream. Your immune system freaks out. It triggers sepsis. It's not that the E. coli suddenly became more evil. It's that it crossed the border illegally.
It's trespassing in a high security zone.
And the body's response to a trespasser in that zone is to use nuclear weapons.
So the key to health isn't necessarily killing all bacteria. It's about keeping them in their assigned zones. How do we do that?
Yeah.
The barriers.
We have 3 primary lines of defense to maintain these borders.
Okay, first is physical.
The skin. And if you look at the diagram of the epidermis, it's not just a wrapper. It's layers and layers of tough, keratinized cells. It's dry, which most bacteria hate. It's slightly acidic. And the top layer is constantly sloughing off.
It's a conveyor belt into the abyss.
Right. If a bacteria tries to set up camp on your arm, the floor literally falls out from under it within a few days. Then, on the inside, in your lungs, you have mucus and cilia. The mucus traps invaders like flypaper, and the cilia are these tiny little hairs that beat upwards constantly to sweep them out so you can cough them up or swallow them.
Swallow them.
Sure.
Right into the chemical defense.
The stomach. It's basically a vat of hydrochloric acid, a pH of around 2. That dissolves most protein structures instantly. Then you have enzymes like lysozyme in your tears and saliva.
What does lysozyme do?
It's this amazing little enzyme that specifically seeks out and breaks the chemical bonds in bacterial cell walls. It literally dissolves them on contact. It's like having acid for tears, but only for bacteria.
That's incredible. And the third fin is the biological one we already mentioned, the competition from the normal flora.
Exactly. So when you put these 3 together, physical, chemical, and biological, you get the big aha moment from the source material.
Which is, most infections are not failures of the immune system, they are failures of barriers.
Yes. We tend to blame our white blood cells. We say, oh, my immune system must be weak. But usually you got sick because you got a cut. Or you inhaled a massive dose of a virus that overwhelmed the cilia. Or you took a medication that compromised your stomach acid. The wall was breached first. The immune system is the cleanup crew that shows up after the break-in.
I really like that reframing. It makes the physical structure of our body seem so much more active. It's not just a container, it's a living wall.
It's an active fortress, absolutely.
But there is one part of the fortress that is guarded more heavily than anywhere else.
Yeah.
Section 4, the Sienna Special Case, the central nervous system.
The brain, the vault, the command center.
Why is the brain treated so different? I mean, obviously it's important, but biologically, what are the special rules?
There are 2 big reasons. 1, as we already said, neurons don't regenerate, so any damage is permanent. 2, and this is a physics problem, the brain is encased in a rigid bone box, the skull.
Which is great for protection against, getting hit on the head.
Fantastic for that. But terrible for inflammation. Think about an infection in your finger. What happens? It gets red, hot, painful, and swollen.
Right. It puffs up.
That swelling is fluid rushing in with immune cells to fight the infection. In your finger, the skin stretches. It hurts, but it's fine. But inside the skull, there is no room to stretch. There's no give.
Physics again.
If the brain swells, even a little, the pressure inside the skull rises instantly. That intracranial pressure crushes the delicate neurons, and just as bad, it squeezes the blood vessels shut. You stroke out. You herniate the brainstem. So a level of inflammation that is considered healing in your finger is fatal in your brain.
So the strategy for the brain can't be let them in and fight them. It has to be exclusion.
Keep them out at all costs. This is the whole purpose of the blood-brain barrier, the BBB.
And how does that work? What is it?
In most of your body, your blood vessels are like leaky garden hoses. They have little holes, they're called fenestrations, that let stuff flow in and out of the bloodstream pretty easily. In the brain, the cells of the blood vessel walls are zippered together with something called tight junctions. Nothing gets through unless there is a specific, dedicated transporter to carry it across.
So it's a bouncer at a club, a very strict bouncer.
The strictest bouncer you've ever met? It keeps out bacteria, yes. But here's the downside. It also keeps out most antibiotics. And, surprisingly to a lot of people, it keeps out most of your own immune system.
Wait, it keeps our own army out. Why would it do that?
It has to, because your main immune soldiers, your neutrophils, your macrophages, what are their primary weapons?
Inflammation.
Inflammation. They throw chemical grenades. They cause swelling. You do not want grenades being thrown inside the command center.
That makes perfect sense. But what if a microbe does get in? What if it breaches the BBB?
Then you have a potential catastrophe, because the brain does have its own private security force, these cells called microglia. And when they get activated by an intruder, they can be extremely aggressive.
The source notes a really interesting trap here. Brain symptoms mean brain infection, but it says that's not always true.
Right. This is a very nuanced point. You can have delirium, confusion, a terrible headache just from a high fever or a systemic flu. That's the brain reacting to the heat and all the chemical signals of war, the cytokines in the blood. That's called encephalopathy.
But an actual infection inside the brain.
That's encephalitis if it's in the brain tissue, or meningitis if it's in the linings. And in those cases, often the damage isn't just the bug eating the brain, it's the immune response itself. It's the friendly fire.
The cytokines.
The cytokines. These are the chemical screams of the immune system. The interleukins, the chemokines, they are what trigger the swelling, the fever, the whole inflammatory cascade.
Yeah.
In bacterial meningitis, the bacteria might be manageable, but the intense swelling caused by the fight is what crushes the brainstem and kills you.
So we're literally destroying the village in order to save it.
Exactly. Which leads to a wild clinical reality. In suspected bacterial meningitis, we often give high-dose steroids to suppress the immune system before we give the antibiotics.
You weaken the defense before you attack the enemy.
You have to calm the riot police down before you send in the SWAT team to arrest the criminals. Otherwise, the riot police will burn down the whole city block. It's not just about killing the bug, it's about managing the war.
Manage the collateral damage.
That's the whole game in neurology.
Which brings us to our final section, evolution. We've talked about the static defenses, the walls and the barriers, but the enemy isn't static.
Not even a little bit. The enemy is changing every second of every day.
We tend to think of evolution as this slow museum piece process. Dinosaurs turning into birds over millions of years.
And that's true for us. We have a generation time of, 25 or 30 years? It takes decades for us to pass on our genes just once. But bacteria.
E. coli, what's its time?
A healthy E. coli in a good environment divides every 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
20 minutes. So in 1 hour, that's 3 generations. In a 24-hour day, that's 72 generations. If you map that onto human time, 1 day for a population of bacteria is equivalent to roughly 2,000 years of human history.
So from the time I eat breakfast to the time I go to bed, the bacteria in my gut have gone from the Roman Empire to the modern day.
Yes. And just imagine how much adaptation, how much change can happen in that amount of time.
And they have high mutation rates, right?
They make mistakes when they copy their DNA, and sometimes just by pure chance, those mistakes are useful. Oops, I accidentally made a protein pump that spits out penicillin. Boom, instant resistance.
But they don't just wait for luck, do they? The source mentioned something called horizontal gene transfer.
This is the real game changer. This is their secret weapon. Humans can only pass genes vertically from parent to child. Bacteria can pass genes horizontally from neighbor to neighbor.
Like swapping trading cards on the playground.
Or more like downloading an app. A drug-resistant bacteria can literally slide up to a vulnerable bacteria, build a little bridge between them called a pilus, and send a copy of the resistance gene right across. Here, dude, take this code. It protects you from amoxicillin.
And they don't even have to be the same species to do this.
Nope. It can be completely different species. It's an open source resistance market. This is why antibiotic resistance spreads so terrifyingly fast in hospitals. The bacteria are actively teaching each other how to survive our best weapons.
That completely reframes the battle. We're not just fighting an enemy, we're fighting an enemy that can upgrade its hardware in real time.
While we are stuck with the same immune system we were born with, it's another asymmetry.
So to wrap this all up, let's look at the student traps. The source mentions the common misconceptions that usually trip people up on this topic.
Yeah, these are the mental models we really need to fix.
Okay, trap number 1. Viruses are just tiny bacteria.
False. Remember the hacker versus the minimalist cell. It's not a size difference, it's a fundamental category difference. One is a living thing, the other is just code. You can't kill a virus with an antibiotic because there is nothing to kill. You have to stop the code from running.
Trap number 2. All bacteria are bad.
Absolutely false. Location, location, location. Most bacteria on and in you are neutral or even helpful. They only become bad when they cross a barrier into a sterile zone. It's not about identity, it's about geography.
And trap number 3. Infection equals tissue destruction by the bug.
Often false. So much of the time, infection equals host response.
Yeah.
The snot, the pus, the fever, the pain, the swelling, that is you. That is your army fighting. The damage is very often self-inflicted in the attempt to clear the invader.
That really changes how I think about being sick.
Mm.
I'm not just being attacked, I'm actually fighting.
You are, and the amazing thing is, almost all the time, you are winning.
It is so much to take in. We started this deep dive by saying humans are ecosystems. But after hearing about the barriers, the specialized zones, the immune armies, I'm thinking of it more like a fortress.
A fortress that is also a very, very busy wildlife preserve
Right. A managed park with extremely high fences.
and very well-armed guards at all the gates.
I keep coming back to that hacker analogy we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
It's incredibly humbling. If viruses are just code waiting for a computer, and we are the computer,
Hmm.
are we really the dominant life form? Or are we just the most complex hardware they have found so far to run their software on?
It's a great question of perspective. We provide the energy, they provide the direction, we build the cities, they figure out how to live in the cracks and in the plumbing. It really makes you wonder who is really in charge of this planet.
And on that slightly existential note, we will leave you to ponder your own internal ecosystem. Take care of your barriers, everyone.
Keep the fences strong.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.